Have you ever really stopped to think about where profit comes from? I mean, really comes from. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most famous and, let's be honest, challenging ideas in all of economics, Karl Marx's theory of surplus value. It's a cornerstone of his massive work, Capital, and trust me, it changed the way we talk about work and money forever. So, at the very heart of this whole thing is that one big question: where does profit come from? You might think, well, that's easy. You just sell something for more than it costs you to make. But for Marx, the real source of that more is this fascinating hidden puzzle. And today we are going to solve it together. But before we could even get close to finding the source of profit, Marx says we have to pump the brakes. We need to go back to square one and really understand the most basic human economic activity of all, work itself. So, what even is labor? Okay, so on the most fundamental level, labor is just us, human beings, purposefully changing the world around us to get what we need. It's not just flailing around, it's the conscious act of taking something from nature, like wood, and transforming it into something useful, like a chair. For Marx, this is just a basic fact of human life. It's what we do. And this is where it gets really interesting. Think about it. A bee builds a honeycomb perfectly, but it's pure instinct. But as Marx points out here, even the absolute worst architect has a plan, a blueprint in their head before they start building. Human labor is conscious, it's planned. We have an idea, a purpose, and then we make it real. That's our special trick. All right, so now that we have a handle on labor, let's introduce the main player in our economic story, the capitalist. When the capitalist shows up to the market, they're not just there to make useful things. Nope, they have a completely different goal in mind. So here's the game plan for the capitalist. It's a two-step process. First, they've got to make something people actually want to buy, something useful. But that's not the main point. The real goal, the second objective, is to make sure that thing they produce is worth more than what they spent on all the ingredients. The materials, the tools, the labor. They're not in the business of making yarn, they're in the business of turning their money into more money. To really see how this plays out, we're going to run a little thought experiment. Let's follow our brand new capitalist as they try to produce some yarn and see if they can pull this off. First things first, they need raw materials. So they buy 10 pounds of cotton, and it costs them 10 shillings. Now, this is important. Marx says that 10 shilling value isn't just a random number. It actually represents all the human labor that already went into producing that cotton, the farming, the picking, all of it. It's like past labor frozen into the cotton. Okay, next up, tools. You can't spin cotton into yarn with your bare hands, so you need a spindle. And every time you use that spindle, it wears down just a tiny bit. That little bit of used up value gets passed along into the yarn. Let's say that costs 2 shillings. And last, but definitely not least, the most critical ingredient. They hire a worker for the day. Now, how much does that cost? Marx has a very specific definition. The value of 1 day of what he calls labor power is basically the cost of everything the worker needs to survive and show up to work the next day. Food, a roof over their head, you get it. In our story, that costs 3 shillings. So let's do the math here. Our capitalist spent 10 shillings on cotton, 2 shillings on the spindle, and 3 shillings on the worker. The total investment? 15 shillings. But then they look at the finished yarn, and the value of that yarn is also 15 shillings. Uh-oh. They've just moved value around from the ingredients to the final product. There's no new value. And, more importantly, no profit. Our capitalist is just standing there completely baffled. They did everything by the book. They paid a fair price for the cotton, the tools, and the worker. And the final product is worth exactly what they put into it. They haven't made a single extra shilling. Their money hasn't grown at all. What went wrong? Well, the solution to this puzzle, the secret ingredient, is hiding in plain sight. It's all about what the capitalist actually bought for those 3 shillings. They didn't just buy labor. They bought something very special. A commodity unlike any other. Okay, this is it. This is the absolute key to the whole theory. There is a massive difference between the price of a worker's ability to work and the value that worker can actually create. Think of it this way. The wage, or the price of labor power, just covers the cost of keeping the worker going. Let's say it takes 6 hours of work for them to make enough value to cover their food and rent. But the capitalists didn't buy 6 hours of work. They bought the worker's entire day of work, say 12 hours. They pay for the 6 hours of upkeep, but they get to use all 12 hours of that creative, value-adding labor. That gap is everything. All right, now that our capitalist is in on the secret, they're going to give this another shot. Let's see how this one little insight completely changes the math. So here's the big move. They pay the worker the exact same 3-shilling wage as before. That wage still covers the value of the 6 hours needed for the worker's upkeep. But this time, they have the worker keep on working for the full 12-hour day. In that time, they're going to process twice as much cotton. Let's look at the new and improved math. Because they're working 12 hours, the raw material costs double to 20 shillings for cotton and 4 for the spindle. But look, the wage for labor power stays the same, just 3 shillings, so the total cost is now 27 shillings. But because the worker labored for a full 12 hours, they added 6 shillings of new value. The first 3 shillings covered their own wage, and the next 3, well, that went straight to the capitalist. So the final value of all that yarn is now 30 shillings. And there it is. The yarn is worth 30 shillings, but it only costs 27 shillings to make. That extra 3 shillings is what Marx calls surplus value. That's the profit. And according to this theory, it comes directly from the extra hours the worker labored after they had already created enough value to cover their own wage. It's the product of their surplus or unpaid labor time. And for Marx, this is the moment of magic. The initial investment of 27 shillings has transformed. It's grown into 30 shillings. The capitalist has successfully made their money grow. That is the moment money is converted into capital. So that's the theory in a nutshell. And yeah, it was developed in the 1800s with examples of yarn spinners and factories. But the big question for all of us is, what does this way of looking at things show us about our own world? What does it reveal about the gig economy, or a typical salaried office job, or even the digital world? It's a provocative thought, but once you start looking for this dynamic, you might just start seeing it everywhere.